Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Isosessions of This Is My Bourbon podcast. I am so thankful to be welcoming back one of the good friends of the show. She was present and one of the panelists at our very first live show ever, and is a longtime friend of the show, of course, Miss Peggy Noe Stevens. Peggy, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you, Perry. And you just taught me something. I didn't know that I was on what I call the Virgin Tour of a live show for you. This is like, that's going to be like going down in history one day.
So we little peek behind the curtain. This is actually coming out the day that would have been our second live show ever. And unfortunately, we had to postpone everything because of COVID-19 and quarantine and people trying to take care of themselves and everything. But I'm thankful that you were able to be a part of that because, you know, I said it at the time, but there was something to be said about the female voices in bourbon. And I am coming at this, and this is a conversation that I wanted to try to avoid so much, especially at that time. But it's something that is so crucial to the stability of bourbon, is not just making it a man's game, but trying to encourage everyone to enjoy it. And that's why I wanted you to be there for that first show.
Well, it was so much fun, and you had a great panelist. I mean, Andrea Wilson, and you know our other podcast friends, as you know. So it was just so much fun. Sarah was great.
Sarah was really great, and she did something in front of everybody that I knew it was coming. I knew that it had to happen at some point. But she just straight up said in front of, you know, a crowd of 75 people, "Peggy, will you be my mentor?" And I loved that so much. That just warmed my heart.
It was wonderful and such a surprise, you know. And I'm always so grateful, honestly, to look back at my career. And, you know, they always say a really great sign of leadership is to look back and see the people that you brought along. So every time a woman asks my help in mentoring or just sometimes just share advice, you know, it's not even a long-term relationship. I'm always honored because I hope that's what I'm known for one day.
And it seems like you have. And I mean, we've talked about it countless times at this point, whether it's been on the show or off the show, that you just are synonymous, regardless of whether or not you established bourbon women. But you seem to be the bourbon woman, and I love that. You know, I mean, I feel like that's like your brand. That is your timestamp in the industry at this time, in the culture at this time. But I imagine at some point you step back and you go, yeah, okay, that's a bit much, right?
Well, you know, it's funny because I do feel I can honestly say I've been a bourbon woman all my life, even before I was in the industry.
Oh, of course.
You know, so the timestamp started way back. And, you know, I look back today and I think, yeah, I mean, it's been part of my fabric. I can't deny that. And I hope to continue doing innovative projects and things that I can do. How do I say? I always do my joy. I always do my passion. And I always have passion projects. And Bourbon Women Association was a passion project, no doubt. And I hope it continues.
And it seems like it's still going as strong as it ever has. But in regards to projects, you are the co-author of a new book with Susan Regler, which is fantastic. Talk a little bit about that project as well and how that kind of came to be.
Well, first and foremost, I should say that Susan Riegler has become a partner in crime for me.
I believe that.
I
I
just
believe
told
that.
this story not too long ago to somebody that the first time I met Susan Riegler, she was the food critic for the Courier Journal here in Louisville, the Louisville
Yes.
newspaper. And I didn't really know her, but way back in the early 2000s when I worked at Woodford Reserve, I decided, and I think this was kind of my first attempt at attracting women to whiskey, was I held an event called the Women's Bourbon, Cigar, and Shopping Night. And
Huh.
it was held at the distillery, and it was black tie. That Lincoln Henderson was there. He showed up in a black tie, and he did a bourbon tasting for all the women. And Susan Riegler attended. And then we had a cigar aficionado come in and teach us how to cut cigars and how to hold them. And then we had a longest ash contest, and Susan Riegler won the longest ash contest. So that was our first time actually meeting, and we became friends down the road. And then when Bourbon Women started the association, which, believe it or not, Harry, in 2021 we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary for
Oh my
Bourbon Women.
gosh.
Susan went on to become president of Bourbon Women, and so she supported me then. So I pulled her aside one day and I said, I am just so itchy to do a book that's been in my head for probably 25 years. And I just haven't really focused on it. And you've written so many books. How have you done it? Because I have written a couple books in the past, but it takes a great amount of discipline. And Susan is just a dynamo with bourbon books. So I said, this is what I want to do. Wouldn't it be fun if we partnered together and we share our knowledge and we share all of our experiences with bourbon women, and we just see how it goes. So what was so hysterical is us, if you could picture it, because we have two very different personalities, two very different approaches to whiskey and bourbon and entertaining, and we just had a ball writing this book together. It's like The Odd Couple writing a book together. And so what
That's
turned
fantastic.
out, yeah, because I was all, about making sure the photos and the presentation and entertaining tips, and then we talk bourbon and I'd say, well, here's how I do it. How do you do it? Let's blend that together. So it was just kind of a labor of love, of friendship. And so wait till you see this week officially launches the book, because it's they're all at the bookstores now. And so we're very excited about that. And wait till you see our launch video. We decided it's going to launch on Friday of this week. We decided to take a little bit of a comedic approach, because who in the world writes a book about entertaining in your home during a quarantine? So, you just got to laugh. You just got to laugh about that. And Susan and I have been laughing the entire time we've written this book. And I hope when people read it, they appreciate what went behind it, because we had a ball.
I am so very, very excited to actually read the book too. You mentioned the writing partner behind Susan Regler, and that's Joy Perini, who just over a year ago passed away.
Oh, yes.
What a great loss, not just to the writing community of whiskey, but just the tasting community as well. I mean, Joy has been missed exponentially since last year. And how have you and Susan kind of worked with each other to counterbalance the loss with the joy of being able to work together to create something and kind of maybe a little bit fill that void?
Well, it's interesting because Joy Perini, she was fearless.
Absolutely.
She had more, I always said, she had so much gusto.
Yes.
And she could put a drink together. If you ever watched her mix a cocktail, like, she never even looked at the glass. I mean, I really think she looked at you the entire time she was making the drink. And I don't even know how to do that. But so I think in a lot of ways where Susan and I look back at Joy is we laugh a lot because she was really funny, very dry wit.
Yes.
And she was such kind of a powerhouse in her own respect, being fearless and everything. This book, we've even used some of the cocktails. It's really kind of a celebration. Anytime that we have included anybody in a book, and regardless of Susan and I writing together or separately, it's really kind of a celebration of people in our lives. So joy is certainly one of those.
I had to kind of step back for a second because I have such an affinity for joy. I mean, I'm sorry. There is just this thought of the Kentucky Cocktail Book,
Oh yeah,
and I know that it's such an easy thing to reach to, but when you are a first time bourbon cocktail drinker or maker, that is like it feels like the Bible
right.
for us,
I can see
right?
that. Sure.
And thinking about the fact that her legacy lives on, not just through her works, but through the people that she has reached, regardless of whether or not she is staring them down and making a cocktail based
Right.
on what she feels like they would
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, but just through personal connection is so exciting and so heartwarming to me. And I'm so the Isosessions are not necessarily about the weeds of the bourbon drinkers of the world and
Right.
everything, but
Right.
I wanted to definitely touch on what you are currently doing in what what we would call, of course, your professional life as a bourbon woman. And I think that this is really special. This is really cool to see, even despite the times that we are in, the effort and the power that is present behind something like your new book. And
Well, thank you.
I'm so excited to see how people latch onto this. But we're what, 12 minutes into this, and I haven't even gotten the chance to ask you, how have you been dealing with this? How are you doing with the quarantine of COVID-19?
Well, I know exactly. And that's why, again, we kind of took a little bit of a comedic approach
Yes.
when we did our launch video, because I think you have to have a sense of humor and you have to keep your perspective. And even though, and I'm not going to lie to you, I think I went through what the rest of the world went through. First was a little bit of denial because
Of course.
I was literally getting ready to leave for New Orleans Bourbon Festival.
Yes.
Literally, the night before, I got a call at 9 o'clock at night from the director, Tracy Napolitano, and said, "Peggy, we really think we're going to have to, cancel or postpone basically the event."
Mhm.
And it was surreal to me in a lot of ways because it hadn't really affected other parts of the states at that time. It was really kind of centered in New York, and frankly, I had just returned from New York at the end of January for the Whiskey Hall of Fame that I received,
Right.
the
Right.
award ceremony. And I was like, okay, I just left New York. I'm headed to New Orleans. It just got canceled. So I stayed home. And so I was in a little bit of denial, as the rest of the world. I think, how serious do we have to take this? What's happening? Well, this will blow over in a couple weeks and, we'll be fine. And so I was very like, business as usual. Yes, we have to cancel travel and change. And I had a ton of speaking engagements in March that I had to postpone or cancel, and that was unfortunate. But at the same time, I don't think it really hit me the severity until our own governor of Kentucky,
Yes.
called for, stay at home measures and isolation. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to make the best of it. I wrote the longest to do list of my life of everything I needed to do around the house and, things that I had not done at work because I put it off, like filing and, just all these different things that I thought, oh, I'm going to get so much
Absolutely.
done. Not that it was a vacation, but it was just a chance to really, catch up on things that I had not done in a
I
long time.
I So I feel that on as much of an emotional level, kind of a spiritual level as well, which is so I don't speak a lot on the podcast about the way that I kind of deal with things in kind of a spiritual level. And it's not necessarily always towards quote unquote God,
Right.
right? It is kind of just towards this feeling of peace and towards reaching for tomorrow,
Exactly.
right? And
Exactly.
I have never written for myself a creed for tomorrow
Hmm.
or a kind of a mantra for tomorrow. And that was something that I took the time to really sit down and craft. What am I trying to be
Good for you.
tomorrow that I wasn't able to be today?
Good for you.
Right. And it's such a genuine, beautiful moment that I really don't feel like I would have gotten to experience outside of the stay at home measures or the time that, we were trying to take care of other people. And I sincerely feel like this is the time for us to understand who we are as people and what it means for us to respect others going forward
Well, I couldn't
after
agree
the
more. Oh, I couldn't agree
yeah.
more. And, like I said, I think it's for everyone in the world, this has come in waves, because it's been denial, then,
Absolutely.
oh, okay, a little bit of panic. What are we supposed to do? Then you say, okay, I'm going to make the best of it and I'm going to do my to-do list. Then, and I think that's where I am now, is what you're talking about, is I just posted something on my Instagram that said, the future me is so very glad I never gave up.
Yes.
And I think everybody now is assessing and saying, okay, things may not go back to normal. So, what does that look like in our world,
Mm.
in our industry, and with my family, with my travel, with my business? What does that look like now? And how do you evolve? So, I'm looking truly forward to a little bit of evolution. I think that many seeds that I had planted, even a year ago have come to fruition. And so I think the journey could be the most exciting time of my life in the next 10 years.
That kind of that notion, and I'm not saying that you might have felt this way, but I have to ask you, leading up to the COVID-19 quarantine, did you feel like you were getting stagnant creatively or in terms of your reach?
Well, I don't think in terms of my reach, just because I knew the book was coming. My goodness, I was so honored. 2 Hall of Fames within 6 months. I
Well,
was I was
that's
feeling
fair.
so on top of things. Honestly, I just felt so rewarded by the hard work and the effort and the accolades. And so I was in a feeling of being grateful and
You still there,
just
Peggy?
yeah, I was just in
Yeah, okay,
grateful
you are.
mode. And looking at, I had some very nice big projects coming up that have been delayed now. So I was kind of in this big role. But to your point, sometimes when you're on a roll, you spin and you don't stop
Yes.
and take time to think about really where you are. And, it's like I tell my team, who I have the best team that works for me. And I tell them, life is wonderful, but sometimes you have to pivot, and we all have
Yes.
to pivot. And so we're pivoting right now. We're seeking new things. We're trying to figure out, what's next in our book. I'm already thinking of my next book. I never would have thought of my next book because, my God, this first one just came out. Or it's not my first one, but my next one.
Sure.
And so, I think that it's brought a really exciting opportunity. It might not feel good right now to everyone where we sit. My heart has always been in hospitality. I am trying to do so many fundraisers right now for the hospitality industry, the Bartenders Guild.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm averaging probably 3 podcasts a week just doing fundraisers. And so, right now, I'm just where I need to be. I'm where I
That
need to be right now.
absolutely. And I don't think that people understand or recognize that right now. I don't think that there is that self-reflection that is needed by not just the country but the world, just to step back and go, this is another part of my story. This is just one moment.
That's right.
And it's refreshing to hear somebody kind of reflect those thoughts that I feel like I've been building on over the past few weeks. And it's been, I look, we got to be honest, there has been kind of a nightmare fuel aspect of it
Sure,
where
absolutely. We're only human if we don't, I mean, you have to feel that.
exactly. And we can't, there is such a strong part of us that understands that we can't ignore what we're going through. We can't
Exactly.
just shirk it and go, tomorrow's another day. It's no different, and we have to deal with it. So knowing that there are, to a certain extent, projects or energy behind what is coming next after the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm so excited for that.
Good.
I
I
really
think that's
cannot
the right
wait for
attitude
what's
to
next.
have. I think,
Yeah.
I am forever optimistic. I've always been an optimist.
Oh, I
And
am too.
I do
I am
not,
too.
for 1 minute, deflect that there's not a lot of pain right now with so many people. And I look at our
Absolutely.
hospital workers, I look at, the people who are literally in the trenches or have lost their job and worry
Yes,
about
ma'am.
how this,
Absolutely.
I would never deflect that, but it's like I was telling my team, we have to feel what we feel about the situation. But then I look at like pilots and I think, man, I kind of like my pilot of the plane to be confident, because he's going to make a really quick decision in a storm. And usually it's the right one. And then I look at the doctors that are doing these surgeries and taking, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I kind of like a doctor that's really confident. And then maybe he has a little bit of ego because, when they are on surgery and they make a decision, it's not without, you're passed out, they are going to make the decision. So I told, my team, I tell my family, this is tough. Feel what you're feeling. But at some point, let's get confident about where we're
Absolutely.
headed.
And
Let's be the
it's
pilot. Let's be the doctor.
it's that Mr. Rogers mentality. Look for the people who are leading during dark times.
That's right.
Right. And try to latch on to that emotion and that that notion of what's next.
That's right. And I'm
But
looking so forward. I know this might sound odd to you. I'm looking so forward to the heroes and reading about all the heroism
for
that comes
sure.
from this. I'm looking so forward to the Nobel Peace Prize winner who creates, the vaccine or what. I mean, I don't know. I just, something great's going to happen.
I 100% agree. What is fun about this time for me, though, and I know it's a very hard pivot, but we are able to kind of take time to enjoy what has brought us together, and that's bourbon and whiskey. And I have to ask you, what drinks have gotten you through this time? What have you kind of leaned on as maybe not your daily drinker, but something that you can kind of look forward to during this period?
Gosh, it's probably easier to say what I haven't drank in the last few weeks.
I imagine whatever you're going to say is going to make Fred Minnick very proud.
Probably. Fred and I have talked a lot over the last 4 weeks.
I will say I have missed Fred so much over these past few weeks. I mean, and it's not that we saw each other, every couple weeks or every month or whatever, but just even being able to sit down with him, I miss it so, so much.
Well, and what's so great about Fred right now, I mean, he is just churning out content on YouTube and
Yes,
everything
yes,
else.
he is.
I mean, it's unbelievable how much he's done, and I'm so proud of him because we've had those conversations, about keeping going and keep going. And the thing about the bourbon industry and the whiskey industry is we're a community. Whether anybody says
Yes.
that or not, I don't know, but I feel they are my community. They are my people. They are there. And so I have enjoyed, I've never spent so much time on social media in my entire life, just reading, having something to do because I want to know how everybody's doing. And I like seeing the posts and I like hearing people be creative and having a sense of humor or sharing a beautiful nature scene because it made them happy. I'm enjoying that because that's my community, and we're not normal right now. And
No.
and how everybody is dealing with it is really comforting because we're still in it together, and I like that. I like that feeling of community. It's been comforting to me.
I do too, and I feel like everybody's kind of stepped up to step back. I
Right.
think is the way that I've felt about it. That
Hmm.
we all know that we're going through these things, we're feeling these same feelings and experiencing the same emotions, but it's unprecedented,
Yes.
and we have to, if we're not operating at the same 100% capacity that we were before, what does 110% look like? What does
Exactly.
150% look like? And by looking at somebody like Fred, I mean, that is such an encouragement to continue to do things, not just to the best of your abilities, but how far can you push yourself? So
And
but
mhm.
that's all of that is to be said. Again, what are you drinking to get yourself through this?
Yeah, that was how it started, right? That was the start of the question. So, what I think I have probably drank more of, because it's probably my favorite, is my Black Manhattan. And
Okay.
if people aren't familiar with a Black Manhattan, you make it pretty much the same way, but you add just a splash of Amaro, which is like a liqueur.
Oh,
And it has a little bit of a cherry licorice note to it, and it just adds just a little bit elevation to the actual Manhattan. So that has been wonderful. My husband makes a killer whiskey sour, which will just punch you in the face after two. So we always enjoy those. It's because we have a great patio. We have a little mint growing up on the patio.
oh, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and so I say that in anticipation of what I'm going to drink next because, um, you know, first week of May was supposed to be Derby, and we always
Ah,
flip the mint on the patio and make juleps, and so we will be making juleps this weekend and next. I promise you.
mm. I there was just a part of my soul that reconnected with Kentucky heritage and
Oh,
my
good.
Kentucky heritage when she
Yeah.
said that, because I mean, every day, every week has just been like, yep, okay, this is just the next 24 hours. But goodness gracious, to celebrate what could have been, I think is just as good. It's just as fun.
It will
So,
be. It will be. And
uh,
I'm telling you right now, I know that Derby has been postponed till September and for every good reason. But I will, first weekend of May, be making some of my traditional Derby favorites. And like I said, drinking juleps. And I know that the people in Louisville will be celebrating Derby from their home. I just know it.
oh, I fully believe that people are going to be singing from the rooftops the praises of the mint julep
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
this weekend.
Yes.
So, Peggy, I want to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for chatting with me for a little bit. It
Oh,
is
love it.
always a pleasure getting to talk with you, whether it's at Bourbon and Beyond or us getting able to sit down on a full panel with friends of the show. But my goodness, it's so good to hear from you during these pandemic quarantines that we've been calling it. Where can people find you on social media, and where can people find your new book if they're able to go out and find it?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Peggy Noe Stevens. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And websites, peggynoestevens.com. If you're interested in the Bourbon Women Association, it is bourbonwomen.org. And the book can be found on Amazon. It can be found at Barnes & Noble. It could be found, if you're familiar with Carmichael's in Louisville, some of the smaller bookstores is carrying it, and you can pre-order it. And actually, we are doing, I think, pretty well because Amazon has a second order already. So I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well, again, Peggy, thank you so much for being with me for this ISO Sessions. If you want to follow us on social media, it is at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can leave us a rate and review on the iTunes app, and then you can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/My Bourbon Podcast for as little as $1 a month. For $5 a month, you get bonus content. And we really do appreciate everybody who has been supporting the show over the past couple of months, despite all of the COVID-19 issues and the pandemic. I just cannot thank you all enough for supporting the show. I think that does it for this edition of the ISO Sessions. Peggy Noe Stevens, goodness gracious. I'm just so happy I got to talk to you this week, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Perry. And it was wonderful to hear from you. Wonderful. And I wish you and your family the best.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next week for the main episode and for next week's ISO Sessions. But until then, I'm Perry, and this is My Bourbon Podcast, ISO Sessions. I think that's how I've been ending these.